We are live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining from. My name is Pratik, and I'm the founder at Webzoli and Testlify. Um, I would love to learn more about you. Where are you guys joining from? So please put down in the chat where you guys joining from. I have very special guest with me. Meet Lou Adler. He's a
Hey, hi
best-selling author.
everybody.
Welcome, Lou. Lou is the best-selling author of "Hire with Your Head," using performance-based hiring to build outstanding diverse teams. He's also the CEO and founder of Adler Group, a consulting and training firm helping companies implement win-win hiring programs using performance-based hiring systems for finding and hiring exceptional talent. More than 40,000 recruiters and hiring managers have attended his groundbreaking workshops over the past 30 years. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. It is
Hey,
absolutely.
delighted to be here with you guys and happy to chat about anything you want to about hiring. So happy to do
So
it.
it's very rare for a personality like you to come to such show. I'm very thankful, sir. So if you have any questions that you want to ask Lou, feel free to put that in the chat. He will be very happy to help you with the answers. Moving on, I have something very interesting to ask you. Okay, I've reading about the book you have written. Can you please share and explain our audience about your book and why our viewers should read it?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons why people should read it, but it's the idea that it's written more, at least the book, Hire with Your Head, is written for hiring managers, human resources people, recruiters, and it really describes techniques on how people can hire people who will wind up being in the top 25% of their peer group. But quite frankly, anybody can be in the top 25% of their peer group.
Mm-hmm.
The easy way is if you're hiring someone, don't make a mistake. Most people, the only reason you're in the bottom half is because you hired someone who shouldn't take the job. Probably was pertinent, competent, but didn't want to do the work or didn't get along with the people in the team. So, from
Yep.
that perspective, from a hiring manager's standpoint, if you don't make a mistake, you'll hire a good person. From a candidate or a job seeker, it's the same thing is don't take a job that's a mistake. If you just have a job that you like, and the book kind of goes through that and a little, you have to kind of reverse engineer it. But if you don't make a mistake, you take a job that you enjoy somewhat and
Mm-hmm.
you're pretty good at, and you get it done, you're going to be in the top half. And if you're really exceptional at it, you'll instantly be in the top 25%. And I think both sides miss the point. Is everyone focuses on the compensation package or what they get on the start date, not about the work. So hire with your head is, hey, let's talk about the work and if it's a good move, regardless of what side of the desk you're on. So I'm sorry for that long-winded answer, but that's the essence of the book.
Perfect. I highly recommend everyone who's watching here to go check out his book. Some amazing reviews I've read about his book on Amazon. It's a best-selling book. I do recommend you to take some time and read it over the weekend. So moving on, a lot has changed in the last 3 years, especially after a pandemic. What, according to you, the future of hiring look like?
Well, I think here's the issue. And it was interesting that I saw this little video clip on LinkedIn yesterday from Steve Jobs. And it was a video of him answering a question in 1997. And there was a person in the audience, and it was only 2 minutes. And there was a person in the audience who asked a question about uh, why is Java better than Open Docs? And it was a very technical question. And he said, and how are you qualified to even do this, run Apple? I mean, this was a kind of an insight. It was kind of a nasty question.
Mm-hmm.
But Steve Jobs' answer was technology isn't what drives product success. You've got
Yep.
to understand what the customer wants and figure out and make that an exceptional experience, and then figure out how you can use all the technologies around to uh, make that experience great. They said that
Mm-hmm.
too many engineers and too many technical people focus on the technology and try to sell it. So now I'm answering your question. I am very cynical about hiring in general. It's because we've spent $500 billion on HR technology in the last 25 years, half a trillion dollars. And it's no better than it was 30 years ago when I wrote my first book, Hire with Your Head, the first edition. And it's because we're trying to make technology work, no, rather than understand the end result, which is hire a great person and a good candidate saying, I want a great job that enhances my career. And I think it's both the responsibility of both the candidate and the hiring manager and the recruiter to say, no, our objective is to find people who want to do this work and are good at it and find it fulfilling and satisfying rather than just fill jobs for most money. So
But
I think,
here's the point. Maybe I'm sorry to interrupt you here.
no, go. We're good.
Uh, let's say, for example, people are applying for a position, okay, and there are approximately 150 resumes. How do, like, companies or HR or recruiting managers evaluate those candidates, the screening process? People, based on like some report I read, there is like 40% chances that people are lying on their resumes. So how do you hire the best talent in the
Okay,
first
so
place?
but you see, now if you go at the end of, you're assuming that the existing technology is good technology and it's a good idea. So you're solving a problem that shouldn't have existed before. Why are 150, 200 people, 500 people applying to jobs? Why are people lying on their resume? That's the problem is don't try to solve that problem. Figure out why did that problem exist to begin with? That problem exists because we made it easy to apply for jobs. People know that, hey, we're screening resume on these skills, so people put those skills on a resume. They believe that if they get interviewed, they'll be able to talk themselves into the job. We've created a problem because we post an individual job and then we've automated it and we've made it very impersonal. So all of the problems you talk about and the solutions to them are the problem. And that's where I go back to it again. If you go to Steve Jobs' point is let's have an experience that allows people to get good jobs, for the right jobs for the right reasons. So I approached a huge job company 10 years ago and said, don't let everybody apply to a job. Just don't let them. You're creating a problem. You're making it too easy. Why don't you just let people only apply to 5 or 6 jobs a week, but promise every job they apply to, they will get interviewed properly. Now, all of a sudden, if I'm a candidate, it costs me to apply to a job. I'd say, okay, I'll apply. No, I'm not going to apply to that. I'm not that. This is a good job. I'll apply to that one. So candidates wouldn't just nilly-willy pick a job. They'd be very serious about not applying to everything and hope and play the lottery. They would actually be a little bit more serious on how they spend their allocation. And companies would say, okay, I'm getting better candidates. I'll talk to all of them. So again, I'm just kind of saying, you asked me what the future of hiring is, Pratik. I'm a cynic about it.
So here's the candidate side of experience, what you mentioned, that it's been so easy today. If you want to go on LinkedIn and find a job, you'll find like position in your specific skill set. You can just easily apply with one click. You don't have to like invest time reading. I have an open position in my company that I'm hiring for, right? And I have a description that I'm looking for in the candidate. People don't even care to read about what I'm looking for and they just apply.
Right, of
So
course.
at least 70% of them are irrelevant. That's like crazy because it's so easier for them to apply. It's very good point that you shared. So let me ask you, maybe how do you take on attracting or approaching candidates for creating high performance team?
Okay, so in my mind, it's a very high touch process. I don't do recruiting anymore. I train companies on and hiring managers how to find good people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. If I post a job, my posting is only a piece of marketing material, which is based on I contact someone personally and said, Pratik, look at this posting. But the people I contact, if I was going to contact you, I qualify people before I contact them. It's just like in sales. A good salesperson doesn't contact every single possible customer in the world. It's a waste of time. They contact people who are pre-qualified. Okay, does this company need my services? Are they big enough to use my services? Are their business challenges appropriate where my services could help them become better? So now I approach that client and maybe I have to talk to 10 clients to get one sale, but I've narrowed the pool down to people who I've done the pre-work. Well, I do the same thing with candidates. I only source semifinalists. Now, a semifinalist is someone who can absolutely do that work. And when I take an assignment, it's not about skills, it's about the work. I ask hiring managers, tell me what you want this person to do. So I know what the work is. And I'll spend an hour, 2 hours understanding the work. I
Yes.
also, so when I'm looking for someone, it's someone who can do that work, not with 10 years experience. I don't care if they have 5 years or 20 years or 50 years. If they can do the work, they're a potential candidate. But they've also been recognized for being exceptional at that work. So I look for a title, maybe one skill, and maybe the person spoke at a conference. So I put the names of conferences down. Maybe the person won an award. Maybe the person is a part of an honor society or business group that would aspire to that. So those are two criteria. That's a half the semifinal. I know that if I have that criteria, the hiring manager would absolutely talk to the person. However, now I also know, hey, would this candidate see this job as a career move? Would it likely put this person in the top half, top third, top quartile? If I don't have
Mhm.
that, then the person's not a semifinalist. So two conditions. Condition one is the hiring manager has to see this person as a good person. Number two, the candidate has to see the job as a good person. So I narrow that down to 10 or 15 people, and then I work very hard to contact them all. And generally speaking, if I have 15, I can contact 10. I call them all up on the phone. We teach recruiting skills. Of the 10, probably 3 or 4 are pretty good, but I also get referrals from everybody else, and I'm back to 15 again. And I kind of keep on doing it. It's a very high touch process, but I can
So
find names now within a week or
maybe I wanna ask you here something, which is maybe that I have experienced as a hiring manager, when I'm like selecting 10 candidates that I want to hire, but again the skill set is an issue. As I mentioned, the resumes, they say that they are expert at JavaScript, for example, but when you actually evaluate them, turns out to be it's okay, like 1 year of experience, kind of a beginner level experience when they say they are an expert. How do you take on like assessment part or evaluate candidate for judging whether this can be the right fit or not?
Okay, so the first thing, when I interview, and I'm not an expert in every single possible field in the world,
Absolutely.
but I have placed people in every possible field in the world. I've placed people that built nuclear fusion models. I've placed presidents of companies. I've never been a president of a billion-dollar company, but I placed people in there. I've never closed a set of books or installed an ERP system worldwide, but I can assess these people more accurately than a hiring manager. And the way I do it is I ask candidate, hey, tell me about the biggest project you ever worked on, Pratik, biggest project you ever worked on. And I dig deep and understand what that project was, what the complexity was, who was on the team, what your role was. I also know, and this is 100% true, 100% true for every single technical person in the world. If you hire a good technical person and you're a line manager, you hire someone with just 6 months or a year experience, and if you think they're good, you give them a good project. You give them a project that stretches them. So all I ask is, hey, what kind of projects did they assign you after you started working after 3 to 6 months? Was it a menial project? Was it a hard project? Why did they assign it to you? What happened as a result of that? So I call it deductive evidence. I don't make the judgment personally if this is a good person. Somebody else has made that judgment for me. So the manager, the peers, the people the person worked with, if they so I'm really looking for this deductive evidence that indicates, hey, this person has been treated well. Why did you get assigned to that big project, Pratik? You only had 1 year experience. It sounds like everyone else on the team was senior managers and above. How'd you get it? Well, I was really good at this, and that. What happened as a result of that? Walk me through the problem. So if you start asking these deductive Sherlock Holmes-like questions, in an hour, you can tell if this person's good or not just by the recognition and the support and the reaction other people have already assigned to this person, or at least acknowledge this person's capable. And it turns out then when I do that, and we've done this for years, then people give assessment tests, and the person passes all the assessment tests, and they say, "How did you do that?" I said, "It was obvious." But what's interesting is you pass the assessment test doesn't mean you're going to be good, but if you're good, you will pass the assessment test. So it's the logic of, I mean, that's just kind of I'm gonna
So,
call it.
when do you think that assessment part or screening part Initial screening. Do you like kind of initial screening? You judge based on resume,
Okay,
and
so
then
let's go back to Steve Jobs. If
yes,
the goal of your business process is to hire a great person, and if no great people are taking the assessment test, you've got the assessment test is useless. I mean, this is a conversation. I've had this with many tests for 40 years with people who give assessment tests. So the idea is no, don't lose sight of the big picture. The big picture is hiring a great person and someone taking a job he or she likes. Well, then you can't. Now, I give 100% of the candidates on my short list the assessment test once I convince them this is worth conversation. That I do because I just want to validate it. But I don't do it for everybody who applies because I don't think the best people aren't applying. So now that's called sub-optimization. You got this greatest assessment test in the world, but if the best people don't apply, it's the most useless test in the world. And I apologize for offending anybody who sells assessment tests, but the reality of it is that you got to go back to Steve Jobs. What's the end goal you want? Start with the end goal and then work backwards. Don't start with the current thing and work forwards. And I think this is 1997 he said this. And you look at Apple, they start with we want to have a great candidate or customer experience. They work backwards to build something that does that. And that's the kind of, I fell into that. I'm not saying that I'm any Steve Jobs, but the idea is, hey,
show
begin
that
with the end in mind.
I saw that you shared yesterday. I even liked it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I understand what you're saying. So last 2 3 years, companies have adapted like remote and hybrid work models, which didn't exist in the past. So that created challenges in hiring, onboarding, performance. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I think we've gone through a huge transition. So that is something. Uh, and I talked to somebody the other day. It says we're learning how to manage remotely.
Yeah,
And I think we have. On the other hand, now Apple just said they're going to have 3 days a week in the office. And I said, maybe, maybe not. I think it should be some combination of uh, when you need to be in the office, you need to be in the office. You're putting let's assume you're putting a product requirements document together that's got engineering people, manufacturing people, marketing people, product marketing people, software development. You got all these people, and it's going to be a full day meeting. I think they should be in the office as best they can, working through that. Such a critical thing where they need to be in the office. Maybe it's
yes.
3 days in a row. I don't know what it is, but it's the idea of arbitrarily saying people should be in the office 3 days a week. I don't know. That to me seems childish. But so I think we're going through that and learning what makes sense to balance everything. If you look at everybody's need, I've got people who have jobs, I've got companies that have issues. I want to balance everything with the goal in mind. I want the company to achieve their objectives. I want the people to achieve their objectives. That's a lot of competing things. How do you
Yeah.
achieve that? My sense would be is you get the team to agree to what they want to do, and they're the ones responsible. You get the team to say, okay, here's our objectives. We'll figure out how to get it done this way. I don't know what the exact answer is. I can just see it needs some work and some understanding to look at the whole package together to see how you're going to get there.
So, in terms of performance, when working remotely, what are the challenges that you saw in the industry, and what are the best tips that HR can do to, like, solve this?
Well, I'm going to say a lot of the challenges we're facing aren't rocket science. They're common sense. But if you go back to, and let me kind of give you a very quick history. My first job was working on a nuclear guided missile project. First job at 22 years old.
Wow.
And my first assignment after I kind of learned how it worked was figure out when to blow up the nuclear missile when it was off course. That's what I did. But you look at the whole, and it was called a systems engineer, which means you look at the whole system. So my whole background is always looking at the whole system. And I didn't invent it. That's the way you did it. They were just jobs that you had to look at everything. And there were some engineers who wanted to make it more accurate. And I said, no, we got to make it more reliable. But so you're always balancing competing objectives. So now to go to your question, which I kind of, what was the question again? I kind of lost track, but I actually had a good answer. But tell me what your question was again, and I'll
I
exactly
said,
that
like,
back.
remote working has been challenging for
Okay, got it. So
one.
now I'm going to go to 1998. As a book came out, First Break All the Rules: What the World's Greatest Managers Do Differently. and it came up with Gallup's Q12, the 12 things that the best managers did. Number one was clarify expectations up front. Number two is give people work they like to do. Three is support and develop these people. And number four was give people the resources they need to be successful. That four represented 80% of what drives human satisfaction. That has not changed. Google's Project Oxygen in 2012 or 2010 proved that. There was just a report out by Gallup again recently that reinforced those same exact principles. So if HR wants to take advice is, why do you use job descriptions that don't define those four things? Clarify expectations up front, give people the tools, work they want to do, support and develop them, and give them the resources to do it. You get those four right. The rest of it you can kind of handle. My first search assignment, because my background is in engineering and manufacturing, I didn't use job descriptions that listed skills. I always asked the hiring manager, tell me about the work. And it didn't matter what the work was. I understood what the work was. That was just kind of natural to do when you have your subject matter expert. You kind of just, let's talk about the job. So I took it. So I think this is where I ask candidates. Candidates got to ask the hiring manager, what do you want this person to do? I'd like to tell you some examples of work that I've done that's most related. That's what HR should do. This is common sense. And yet, why does HR not take advantage of all this research and say, let's define work based on what people want to do? And then the likelihood that they'll be satisfied and motivated 6 months, a year, 2 years later will be the same. This is the cause of the Great Resignation. People are taking jobs for what the pay package is, not the work they're going to do. And so to me, that is not rocket science. It is common sense that somehow. So if I was going to give HR advice, be common sense. The research is out there. Let's just apply it in the pre-hire process. Don't do some other kind of process ahead of time. Do it the same way people get hire and motivate.
Last 1 year, resignation have been like peaked. People were not satisfied. Companies were calling employees back to work, and people were switching jobs. And now turned out that companies are adapting towards hybrid work model, which is like 3 times in the office and rest of the time they can work remotely. Again, that comes down to one important aspect is performance, where you said specifically that expectation set upfront can solve the problem. In the audience, if somebody has a question about the things that we discussed so far, this is your opportunity to talk to Lou, and he will be doing his best to answer you. So take this opportunity. It's a very rare chance that you get to speak with an expert in the industry. So now I want to ask you next question. Okay, uh, what's the right way to performance based hiring in the remote work era, like ideal way that you will set and process that, because interviews are going remote, right? Because we have doing meetings on Zoom. It's not like human to human interaction anymore. Sometimes you are hiring people from different city, or offshore hiring for different regions. Still, like, you have to make sure that you're hiring the right person. You understand that he will perform the job. What are the key things that you will do or suggest HRs to do this accurately?
Okay, so if I was going to hire, let's assume that you're the hiring manager and you're hiring 10, 15 people, coders, developers, product marketing people, product managers, seniors, principals, whatever it is. And I understand the job, one of those roles. I would then, so now I'm talking to a candidate. If I was talking to a candidate, say, walk me through a project you've been on that has really been remote. Who was on the team? What was your role? What was the success of that? How did you manage your day-to-day activity? How did you do your agile? How did you perform well? Or how did you handle your coding? How did you interact with the people? I would really understand how that person managed his or her time, how that person performed against the objectives, how the system worked. Did they get their stuff on time? What was the quality? What was the reliability? How did they get advice and counsel? How did they check their work? I don't care if it was a coding work or design work or a product work. I would really want to understand that challenge of that remote team, and I'd want to make sure that person had done something comparable and similar. as a recruiter, I have a responsibility to get the right person. Maybe so I don't take a lot of risk. I look at their performance doing similar kind of work. It doesn't have to be identical work, but it has to be similar. So
Similar.
if someone had 2 years experience, but was doing 3 or 4 years worth of work and could handle this flexible environment, was responsible to get his or her work done on time, could communicate effectively, didn't mind working at 10 o'clock at night for people who were open at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I saw that a pattern of that. I said, this is a good person. We got to really check this person out. So that's how I would start the assessment process, to really understand how they work in that kind of environment. And if they say they could do it, it doesn't bother me. I'm a cynic. I don't trust anybody. They have to have done it on a consistent basis recently. And then I'm saying, okay, this person's probably a good candidate that can get there. And if they're pretty smart but doesn't have all the skills, I'd say this person can work in that environment. We're going to have to put that person through either hire this person in a lower job and then really put them through some stretch training program. So that's how I would probably advise my client if I found a good person who could work in that environment.
Makes sense. So that leads me to the next question. In terms of performance-based hiring method, that you usually share this topic a lot. So, what are the key areas to identify unqualified candidates during recruitment? Which
Okay,
you
so
like you just mentioned something, but maybe you can
yeah,
elaborate on.
let me highlight this. So over the years, I put together what I call the hiring formula for success. Hiring formula for success. Hiring formula for success basically says ability to do the work. They don't have the ability to do the work. They're not in the game, and that includes hard and soft skills and organizational skills. So ability to do the work in relationship to fit drives motivation, and because motivation is so important, it's squared. That equals performance. So it's ability to do the work in relationship to fit times motivation squared equals performance. Motivation is the key there. You could
Yeah.
be perfectly competent to do the work, but if you don't like the environment, you don't like working off, you're not responsible enough, you need more direction, well, you're going to underperform even if you're good. So a lot of what I do, hold on, I'm trying to get this camera here so I can at least get some ideas here a little bit better. So the idea of this is you want to make sure that the person, and most people just focus on competency. Competency is, and it's usually technical skills. A lot more to competency. It's team skills, organizational skills, communication skills, and a lot of issues with respect to that. Those are actually easy to measure. It's the fit factors that are hard. Fit with the culture, fit with the pace, fit with the resources, fit with the hiring manager, fit with the job you really want to do that work. That's where we even asked this other question about in the office. I'd want to understand that environment, how the manager directs, how the person reports his or her performance, how they handle their meetings and stand-ups and all those kinds of things. So you'd really understand that. So then when you're interviewing a candidate, you talk about, tell me about work you've done that's remote. How did you do it? So you're trying to find patterns there and look at both competency and the fit factors. And also, was this candidate really motivated to do that work? So that's how I kind of, I mean, there's 2 or 3 chapters on that specific topic in the book, but that's the essence of it.
Awesome, very insightful. Maybe could you share some secrets of retaining employees? Because it's challenging these days on the hybrid work model. Sometimes companies are offering higher job salaries and people want to switch, maybe 30% hike, 40% hike. There are a lot of startups funded by VCs. They have money and they want to take employees from other company. How do HR can make sure that they retain the talent they already hired?
Well, let me kind of do it 2 ways. So let me just, if I was hiring a candidate, so let's assume I was trying to hire you, Pratik, as a recruiter. I would start by saying, in our first conversation, Pratik, if we're going to make you an offer, now I tell people, I'm going to have an interview with you right now.
Yes.
I'm only going to present 4 candidates to the hiring manager. You might be one of them, but one of you will get a job. So if I present you to the hiring manager, 25% chance you're going to get an offer. But I want to tell you right now, this is in my first 10 minutes of a conversation with a candidate. I say, if we're going to make you an offer, a couple of days before we make you an offer, I'm going to ask you this question. The question will be forget the money. Forget anything about the bonus, anything about that. Do you really want this job? And For you to really want this job without thinking about the money, it's about the work itself, the environment in which that work takes place, part hybrid, part remote, part in the office. It's the content of the work itself. Do you really want to do that work? Do you really want to work for this hiring manager in this company? Can you really work in this environment, in this pace? And do you see this job as a true career move? You're going to, before we make you the actual offer, you're going to have to explain all of those things to me. But it's incumbent upon me and my client and the company to give you all the information to make that. So the idea is we really want you to look at this. We call it a win-win hiring outcome, which you look at all the variables associated with it. Will you be successful during the course of the year, at the end of the year, and say, this is a great job? Now, so you take, that's what I do with respect to before I hire someone. There's no reason a company can't do that same thing. Everybody knows what drives human performance on the job. All of those things I just said, and many of them are the Gallup Q12. It's not rocket. This is written year after year. There's another study. I think McKinsey just came out with another study that reinforced all of those things in the last 6 months. So this, what drives human performance and satisfaction is not unknown. What finds surprising is that we have to start from scratch every single day. Why don't we write job postings about that? Why don't we make, this is what I talk about, if you look at the end in mind, what drives human performance? Let's find jobs to do that. The cause of the great resignation is because we can switch jobs quickly and we focus too much on we get the start date, not on all those other factors that drive success. My firm placed 1,500 people when I was a recruiter. I don't do recruiting anymore. Of those, not only less than 10%, I think it was 7%, left in the first year. We actually gave a 1-year guarantee because we focused on all those issues. We gave people work they wanted to do. And I would say 2/3 of those people got promoted in the first year or two. Wow. Many of them became presidents of companies and they started out as staff and managers. So the idea is this stuff is not rocket science, and yet we ignore reality and we try to use technology to solve a problem where the technology is not the solution. Technology is the problem. And now so we need more technology to solve a problem that we created to begin with. So it's a never-ending battle.
You want to say, in like, instead of like, thinking of a bad hire who's willing to switch, hire the best person in the first place.
Wait, I didn't understand that question. Say that, Pratik, again.
So basically what you're trying to say here is the wrong hire can be challenging. So make sure that you hire the right person in the first place and make sure that he is loving what he's going to do at work. So
well, yes, and also I think it's incumbent on both sides of the table. I spend more time with fewer people. This is a very critical decision for the company. It is a very critical decision for the candidate. And neither party makes these decisions using common sense and being really focusing on what they want to do and what they want to get. They kind of make this superficial decision based on, they really know what the start date package is, how much money they're going to get, the title, the benefits. They know that. They don't really know the work they're going to do because that hasn't been discussed. Hiring manager doesn't discuss it. Candidates don't ask about it. They get promised, oh, you're going to do work like this, this, and this. They get there, that's not the work they're doing. And they get disappointed. Well, they promised me this, but it didn't happen. No, it didn't happen because you didn't ask the questions during the interview. So I think that's why I say it's the candidate and the hiring manager and the company have to do this deliberately to say, okay, here's our plan of action of the information we're going to get. And why they don't do it, and they let hiring managers make judgments based on their own whims. They don't know how to do it. They haven't defined the work. So it's up to everybody's, it's kind of anarchy in the hiring process. And then we try to overlay with technology to think, oh, now we're solving the problem this way. No, the problem, I would throw the whole thing out. I would blow this rocket ship up and start over. That's not going to happen.
Based on what you said today, technology in every other field, right now we are doing a Zoom call, made our life so much easier that we can communicate so easily. We can share our ideas to the world so easily. Do you think that is helping our HR industry in some way?
Oh, I think if it's used properly, I've conducted many interviews using Zoom. I still ask the same questions. So the technology is an enabler, and I 100% support that. I just think I would rather, if you're going to take a job, I don't care if you're a staff engineer or a president of a company, that is a critical business decision for you as a person.
Yeah.
It's not all about the start date package. So when I ask you, Pratik, over the next 2 to 3 weeks, you're going to go through a series of interviews where you're going to be able to make a honest long-term career decision. Don't use the short-term information to make it. Yes, I know our short-term compensation package has to be competitive, but once we're in the game, everything else matters more. Obviously, if we're not going to give you a good offer, that's not fair. We got to give you a competitive offer, but more important, we got to give you a great career move. And I think most candidates and companies don't think that way. I know we got to fill the job quickly. And the candidate says, well, I got to get the most money.
Funny part is, like, there's somebody commented, I would be happy with the swag and a MacBook, and not to jump ships. Basically, what he's trying to say is companies are comparing not just on salaries but on swags and MacBook and welcome gifts and signing bonuses, and like kind of trying to influence employees to leave their jobs.
What's interesting is, though, and I'll go back to many years ago, but I ask it all the time now. I had a candidate who didn't accept an offer. Was I'm a recruiter, outside recruiter, so I would only get paid if I placed the candidate.
Yes.
I had a candidate who told me he wasn't going to take my offer because the other offer had more money, better title, and closer to home. And I told him, after he told me the details, I said, John, you're making a long-term strategic decision using tactical information. And a lot of candidates make long-term decisions using short-term information. And it's a huge mistake. He was going into an old line manufacturing electronic industry that I said, John, whatever you do in the next 2 to 3 years will affect the next 5 or 10 of your life. So make this a 10-year decision. You're
Yes.
going to spend 2 to 3 years, a little closer to home, a little bit more money, going into an industry. In 3 years from now, you're not going to be any better than you are today. You're basically telling, you just put a lid on your career. On the other hand, this was back in 30, 40 years ago when electronic displays were really just becoming all the stuff you see on your cell phones now and TVs. All of it was going through a huge revolution at that time. My client was building those technologies. I said, otherwise, you're going into a technology that's going to change the world, and it's going to be. And we didn't know where it was going to go, but we just knew it was huge. And he slept on that overnight and accepted my job. A year later, he called me and said, that was the best career decision I ever made. Don't make long-term decisions using short-term information. He had just been promoted. He was leading this company's expansion into China. That was when China manufacturing was big. So he led that whole effort because he made a long-term career decision. The money was slightly less, but I ask candidates, think about the best job you've ever had in your whole career. Best job you ever had. Was it because of the money you were making or because of the work you were doing? What do you think most people say? What would everybody in this call say? Think about the best job you ever had in your life. When you really like, was it the money or the work?
When I was
It's always the
working,
work and the people. So
I do remember. I do remember this. What you're saying. Yes, I agree. Money was not the driver that time. I was having fun with my team.
Right. Yeah, it's always that.
Yes, true, very true. So, as we were discussing about technology, I want to ask you, like, what are the HR tech tools that you came across in last 10 years that a recruiter should be using or must be like useful to make the hiring process easier and automated?
Okay, so let me kind of go back through the history of technology in 1 minute. I would say before job boards, and let's say 1995 and earlier, job boards were just coming out. LinkedIn didn't exist. It was hard to get candidates, good candidates. It was a very manual, phone-driven process. You had to look in old directories and call people up, and it was very hard to get a list of candidates.
Yes.
Today, so I just talked to a president of a company. She's looking for a vice president of creative marketing. 20 years ago, that job would have taken me a month to find candidates, just to find the candidates. Today, she just asked me this yesterday. I'll find candidates by tomorrow. I'll go on LinkedIn and find candidates. I don't know if I could recruit them. So the big change is you can find candidates very, very quickly. And 20 years ago, once I found the candidate, I just call them up. Everyone would have talked to me because that was the way it was done. Once I got a name, I would just call people up because they just had their number. I called the office. They didn't have cell phones. They answered the phone and I talked to them. So it was easy to talk. It was hard to find names, easy to talk to people. Now it's easy to find names, hard to talk to them. But in my mind, the most important tool in a recruiter's arsenal, without question, is LinkedIn Recruiter. LinkedIn, and the reason it's a good tool is not what everybody thinks. It is not a database of 800 million people. It's a network of 800 million people. And I'll say that again, it's a network. Everybody's connected. I only need to find 10 people who might know my candidate. So I just have to connect with those people. And then I can search in LinkedIn Recruiter. I can search on their connections. So Pratik, I can search on your connections. I could do it right now, but we don't have time. I should have done it. I can actually name people on your thing and ask you, what do you think about this person and this person? You didn't even have to tell me they were looking. I just asked you. I can search using Clever Boolean, find people that are connected to you, and I could ask you, Pratik, what do you think of this person and this person? And you say, well, she's good, he's not. I said, can I use your name? Of course. So now I call up somebody, let me call Ravi, or whom I'm trying to find names on here, but I can't pronounce them. Athira, I'm sorry, Athira. I could call her up and say, Athira, I was just talking to Pratik. He said you're a pretty remarkable person. Not that you were looking, but would you be open to chat about something that made career sense? Because I've created a cold call into a semi-warm call, all of a sudden I've got a connection, and the likelihood, number one, I wouldn't have called her up unless she was great, and she will talk to me. That to me is a huge change. It's this combination of using technology to create a high-touch environment. And that's why I think LinkedIn Recruiter as a network is a game changer. And I still do it. Did I do it? I mean, I could find that creative marketing person and get names for it because I look at it backwards. I look at who can I know, who knows this person whom I can call. So that's what I would say is a key difference.
But there is also a challenge when they are working for someone already, and there is maybe wait time that before they make a decision, you have to wait 30 days, 60 days. Sometimes in India, there are companies that have a wait time of 60 days at least.
How many days?
60 days.
You mean you can't leave a company for 60 days? Well,
Yes.
that's like slavery. Let's say this: I can't deal in that environment. Then that's
so I'm based out of Israel, and here the notice period is 30 days as in standard. Again, that is negotiable, but again, that is something that you do out of respect and leave on good notes.
Oh, I would do that. I don't like people. I think you need 3 to 4 weeks, and that to me, as I always say, probably needs 3 to 4. I'm fine with that. I have a good, and I don't lose a lot of candidates, but you do have to be respectful. You don't want to burn any bridges. 60 days seems too long. 3 to 4 weeks seems fair. But again, that's a law that to me is a stupid law. But you got
honestly, I had a conversation with a girl this morning, and I really wanted her on my team, and she said she has a notice period of 60 days. I said, what?
90 days in India. Oh my God. To leave?
I said, you have to talk to your manager. I said, if you're not happy and you want to switch for your career move, you have to negotiate. She said, I signed the contract. I said, okay.
Sometimes you can't get out of those things. Yeah. We got to ask Aretha. You want to answer Aretha? I can't pronounce her name.
It says India has 90 days notice period as well.
Yeah, but I think Aretha had a good question.
Yes. So how closely performance-based hiring can improve the quality of your employees?
Okay. So to me, this is the core of what we do. So when I take a search assignment, managers always have a list of skills, experience, and competencies. And I always say this, that is not a job description. That is a person description. Let's put the person description in the parking lot. What do you want a person in this job to do? And then they tell me, build a team, launch a product, design this, do this analysis. They tell me, I say, okay, what would it take to be in the top 25% doing that work? So I define quality of hire based on what would the best people doing that work do. And this is what I tell hiring managers is I will not compromise on that work. I will find people who've done work like that, but give me relief on the years of skills and experience they need to do that work. And that opens a talent pool to everybody. I've got to find people who are competent and motivated to do that work that meet the hiring formula for success. Ability to do the work and relationship to fit drives motivation. That squared equals results. I'm looking for people who can do that work. Atheria, and I apologize for killing your name, and I totally apologize.
No, that's correct. Actually, Atera is like the right name.
Okay. So to me, that's how I would do it, is I define quality up front as a series of performance objectives. Then I find candidates who've done comparable work, not identical, in similar environments and have excelled at it. And I only go to semifinalists, people who do it, because I know the hiring manager needs to see it. That person is great, and the candidate has to see it. I usually try to give candidates 20% stretch jobs, a bit of a mix of more satisfying work, faster growth, a job with more impact, a job with more satisfaction. So I'm really looking for those factors that say, okay, I got to give this candidate enough stretch where he or she sees this as a good career move.
So maybe I want to ask you, you before you mentioned this, we were discussing about the HR tools. You mentioned LinkedIn recruiting tool that HR can use. What about like CRM platforms out there? How do you manage all of the how do you manage all of the candidates? Let's say you have pile of resumes. How do you manage all of this data and the process? For example, rejection emails. We have to inform. Today, HR don't even like inform if they were rejected after like.
Okay, so let's it's an excellent question, but let's think about this. The main tool that companies use to manage their candidate data is called an applicant tracking system. And there's 10 or 20 of them around, maybe more. But think about this. Because we've made it so easy to apply, less than 1% of people who apply get a job. That's less than 1%. Yes. 2 to 3% get interviewed. So now you got 97% that don't get anything. So now you have to build a system to manage the 97%. And then you also want to treat the 3 to 4% who you actually interview properly. So we've diluted the process, but we've created a system to manage the 90% of the data well. Candidate experience, good offer letters, rejection letters. Think about all the overhead. In my mind, we made a mistake. I only talk to 20. I don't talk to 300 people or 500. I talk to 20 people. And it's easy to manage 20 people. I can have a basic applicant tracking system, treat everybody correctly. I just don't let everybody apply. It's a different process. Now, that's what I do. I can have a very simple applicant tracking system that people think is remarkable, but I don't have to manage 97% because I haven't created an overhead problem. So you think about, now you go to job boards themselves, they love that problem. They sell job postings. So they make more money the postings. But I saw a posting 2 weeks ago from Kohler Manufacturing Company. Kohler's the one that makes the bathroom, the showers and the faucets, and they really make beautiful stuff for the bathroom and the shower. Beautiful.
Yeah.
It had to be the VPHR. I just saw it come through in my LinkedIn feed. It said, we're looking for a bunch of HR people. And we've got stuff from the staff level to the director level. If you're interested, let's talk about how we can change the lives of every one of our employees. That's all the ad said. So that's called a hub and spoke. Hey, if you're good, we'll find a job for you in this field. And it was all they said. It was a very simple ad, but you think about that. That is the way you do it. So now I get good people, and I'll figure out what the system should figure out what job they should have. That candidate, right now, the candidate should figure out what job he or she wants. No, if you're good, here, give us your resume. We'll find a job for you. So you kind of reverse it. And that's the way it was in the olden days, Pratik. You don't remember this, but when I was growing up, and even as I was a recruiter, and my second job, I told you my first job was working on a nuclear missile project. My second job, which was only a year later, is I'm looking at the Sunday Classified in the Los Angeles Times. There was this big page, it could have been a whole half a page ad in the newspaper. It said Hughes Aircraft Company is looking for guidance and control systems engineers for all of these projects. If you're interested, send your resume. That's all it said. I had these lists of all these different jobs. So I just sent my resume in. I got a call 3 days later and got a job 2 weeks later. And the only reason I wanted to go there was it was closer to home, and I just found a girl. I just had a girlfriend of whom I ultimately married, and we're still married 50 plus years later. But The idea was I was in a different area driving, long drive, but it's called the hub and spoke. It was easy. They put out the whole page in the Los Angeles Times on Sunday, but that's how I didn't have to look for each individual classified posting. But postings, when you think about it, it's pretty archaic technology. Let's pay $300 for a little posting, and so the job boards want turnover. They make more money. The more turnover, the greater. You look at their sales; they're going up like crazy. But might not necessarily be the best business decision, but for them, it's a great business model. Sorry for that rant.
No, but it was perfectly said. Now, which traditional, there are traditional hiring methods which are still relevant and would stay relevant in the future. What do you think are those methods?
Wait,
One
say
of
that again. I misunderstood the first part of that particular.
Okay, which traditional hiring methods are still relevant and would be relevant in the future as well?
I'm really a cynic on this one, so I don't know that I find anything relevant. And that's bad to say. I have a point of view that is contrary to 95% of everybody out there. Um, if you say assessment tests, yeah, I give assessment tests to everybody. And as an interviewer, I'm really digging into the person's accomplishments. But in the back of my mind, I know that this candidate's got to take an assessment test. So I know that I better start asking these questions, knowing that I don't want to be superficial. So if you ask me what's relevant is not, and I remember this was I can't remember exactly. I think it was East West Bank. It was a bank in the West Coast of the United States that did a lot of work with the Orient. And I met the president of the company there, and he was a remarkable guy. And he wanted everybody to interview, but didn't want to give everybody a full vote. But I said, okay, why don't we do this? Why don't we narrow the interviewing process so that people own one of those factors in the hiring formula for success? And they would get examples of work that were most closely aligned to that. And then we debrief together. And that turned out to be remarkable because if you don't give everybody a full vote, Pratik, you're only going to judge team skills. Athira, you're going to judge technical competency. Shashik, you're going to focus on project management and organization. Get detailed examples of people doing that kind of work in relationship to the job. Then we'll meet together and we'll share that evidence. That was a huge, huge thing, is because making a yes or no decision, it's much easier to say no. It's safer. There's one little, I don't think so, I'll go no. But if all you have to measure is this narrow focus on, do you think this person has got good project management skills? You own that. You say, I am responsible for judging this. So when you share that evidence, I'm going to tell you, it's almost remarkable how the assessment is 100% accurate.
So
to me, I would say that's how you divide and conquer.
So you do think assessment is kind of necessary, even though when you were recruiting, you were doing it mostly manual screening.
I would give assessments 100% of the time to the 4 or 5 finalists. So to me, they were mandatory because you interview someone late at night, you're tired, and you know that's going to happen. So to me, it's except you have to do that because you still got human nature. Adding that level of technology and confirmation is critical. Always do a background check, always do a reference check, always do an assessment test, cognitive skills, as well as reasoning. To me, 100% mandatory. The problem I have with people who sell tests is they want to do it for everybody because they make more money. I want to do it for just the people who are ultimately going to get hired. So
it really depends on the volume. It really depends on the volume you're bringing resumes in, and you want to save time. So you're right. When you have 5 people that you are in serious process of hiring, and you want to evaluate which is the best out of 5, that can come handy for sure.
Maybe it's somewhere in between is the right balance between, hey, after the first round of interview, hey, I like your background candidate. Here's our next step in the process. So you start developing a relationship rather than putting everybody through it, which to me is not fair. But I think there's certain screening that you do. Hey, I think we're a good candidate. We'd like you to go through the test. So I think there's probably some balance there that would make most sense.
So there is one question. I read your book, Hire with Your Head. According to you, what are the keys for conducting an evidence-based candidate assessment?
Yeah, I think that's Maitra. Thank you very much for reading the book. Great book, isn't it? Forget what I just said there. It's a good book,
Absolutely,
though.
it is.
But the real issue is, as I said earlier, I call it the Sherlock Holmes deductive evidence, is the ability to share evidence during the assessment. So I'll give you an example. This was a long, long time ago where I realized how important evidence was. I had a search assignment for cost manager for a major manufacturing company. It was probably 30, 40. It was a long time ago.
Uh-huh.
Everybody, the controller, the VP manufacturing, the director of planning, the director of accounting, all loved my candidate. But the CFO, the chief financial officer, had a 10-minute interview and said, this guy's too soft spoken, incompetent. 10 minutes said he was incompetent. I called the CFO up and said, are you aware that this person implemented an ERP cost system on a McCormick and Dodge platform that was transitioning to SAP? And as a result, and it took 3 years to do it, got a major recognition for doing it, asked him to do this worldwide at a company more complicated than you. And because of soft-spoken nature, he was really good at it. The only reason he's even available is his wife is going to school in the local area to get her MD degree, and it's got 4 years here in terms of finishing her MD degree in residency. And the guy's remarkable. And you didn't like him because he was soft-spoken, and yet that was the key to success.
Wow.
Well,
Yes.
the CFO was shocked when I said that. He said, I'll talk to him the next morning. So I had the candidate write up this accomplishment. He went through and he said, he called me up 2 hours later. He said, the guy's great. I totally apologize. He then said, I want every single candidate to this kind of evidence to see their accomplishments. It was just like a game changer. But it's that, and I discovered this: you can't out yell a hiring manager. I have tried. I'm from New York. I've worked in manufacturing. It doesn't work. But you can provide evidence, and you can do it in a very soft-spoken manner, and whatever you want to do it. But its evidence is real specifics, dates, facts, experiences, recognition. That's the key to hiring success on both sides of the table.
Super well said. So before we end this, I want to give you an opportunity to do maybe share your words of wisdom or something that HR should do moving forward, or some of your secret success tips that you had throughout your journey as a recruiter that others can take inspiration from.
Well, I see there's two. One that's universal to candidates and hiring managers, and it's don't make long-term decisions using short-term data. And I learned this when I was a financial analyst. After I became an engineer, I became a financial analyst working with a corporation. And I remember the president of a company saying to another president, don't strategy drives tactics. It's not the other way around. Don't make long-term decisions using short-term information. So that was kind of the key. Look at everything. Look at what you're going to be doing on the job. And hiring managers, interviewers, companies, HR, and job seekers should do that as well. And I tell candidates, when you're interviewing, if you don't feel you're being interviewed properly, just say, hey, can you tell me a little bit about what you want this person to accomplish on the job? I'd like to give you some stories of work that I've done. So force feed the evidence. That's real critical. The other one is, and it's the interview of job descriptions don't define, shouldn't define the person, they should define success. So it's what people do with what they have that makes them successful, not what they have. So I always focus on, when I interview a candidate during the work history review, I find out what they have in terms of years of experience. But then I say, what have you accomplished with that? And I'm always looking for people who accomplish more with what they have than less. So if you've got 3 years experience in doing 10 years worth of work, you're great. But if you've got 10 years experience doing 3 years of work, who cares? So it's what people do with what they have that makes them successful. And as long as they can do the work, they have the right to earn this job. And that's, to me, the key to hiring success.
Super well said. Thank you so much, Lou. It was really a pleasure to meet you and talk to you about the future of hiring. Thank you, everyone who was listening. And if you have not checked out Testlify, I would love you to just go and learn more about how we help in your recruitment process, saving you 75% of the time. And if you have any questions offline, feel free to reach me out on LinkedIn. I respond to each and every messages I get. So have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye.